Sentire Media.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of A New Life in Italy. I'm Samantha Wilson, and today's episode is all about what happens when things don't go according to plan. So let's be honest, moving to Italy isn't always smooth, and Italian bureaucracy can be very confusing, very disorganized, and super frustrating. From consulates that give you different answers to comune offices asking for unexpected documents, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. And here's the thing, that most of the time you won't even know that you've got something wrong until you're knee-deep in the process. And then by then, you're pivoting, you're scrambling, and sometimes getting sent back for homework. But don't worry, because you are not alone. Today, we're talking about how to navigate these unexpected twists, and I'm going to be sitting down with a couple who know this struggle all too well. They're one of the first to apply and receive the Digital Nomad Visa in Los Angeles. And let's just say the process didn't quite go as planned. We're going to talk about what caught them off guard, how they handled the challenges, and the lessons that they learned along the way. So whether you are applying for your visa now or planning your move in the future, stick around because we've got real stories, real advice, and some game-changing tips to help you avoid the chaos and stay one step ahead. I'm Samantha Wilson, Chief Dreammaker at smartmoveitaly.com, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show where each week I take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to move to Italy, introduce you to some fascinating people, answer your questions, and show you how starting a new life in Bel Paese is possible for you. All right, let's set the stage for today's conversation. Now, one thing I tell clients all the time is this. When you're moving to Italy, you have to be flexible. You have to be patient and prepared to pivot. You see, Italian bureaucracy has a reputation for being, let's call it unique, I guess to say nicely, but it's a well-deserved reputation. The consulates, for example, don't always give the same answers from one person to the next. Or here in Italy, the comune offices often have their own rules. And then the questura, don't even get me started on that one, because one day they can ask for one kind of document, and then the next they'll want something completely different. It really depends on the day and the person and the questura. So rules, procedures, and the processes change, and none of the offices seem to talk to each other or read the same directives. So you can easily end up rotating throughout offices and never really accomplishing anything. The truth is, it's not your fault if you get confused, especially if you're brave enough to try it all by yourself. You see, the system itself can be inconsistent, and sometimes you end up chasing answers that you wish were true instead of the ones that actually are. See, I see this part all the time. We will give, the right answer to a question, but it's contrary to what someone might have read on Facebook or that someone else had told them that they had experienced themselves. So instead of following the right pathway, the legal pathway, people often continue to ask the same question to as many people as they want until they get the answer that they want to hear. And you know what? It is a little frustrating from our side, but I totally get it because you don't know what you don't know. And it's normal to gravitate to the easiest, most convenient answer when the alternative sounds like a total nightmare. So the only way through this whole process, my friends, is to plan ahead, to ask the right questions to the right people, and know when to pivot and be available to change and be flexible to pivot in a different direction. Take the Digital Nomad Visa, for example. Now, this is a fairly new visa. It's been out for just about a year now, and it's kind of exciting because it has opened up the doors for a lot of other people that otherwise couldn't get, let's say, a self-employment visa. And it's the perfect solution for remote workers who want to live in Italy. But because it's new, not everyone fully understands the process yet, not even the consulates. And that's why today's guest is the perfect person to talk to. You see, it's actually a husband and a wife, and the wife, Jenna, is the one that actually applied for the Digital Nomad Visa. And they learned the hard way that things don't always go as planned. Now, their experience will give you some insight into the challenges that you might face, and more importantly, how to overcome them. But before we dive into the interview, let's talk briefly about how to avoid falling into the trap of misinformation and miscommunication. First, always double check the source of the information that you're relying on. If it's coming from some random Facebook group or a friend of a friend or somebody who thinks they're an expert in one of these groups, take it with a grain of salt because they don't have any skin in the game. They've got nothing to lose by giving you bad information. Second, don't be afraid to ask for clarification directly from the consulate or even the person, the professional who you know that's helping you through the process. And finally, understand that flexibility is your best friend in Italy, not just at the beginning, but always. So if plan A doesn't work, be ready with plan B or even plan C. With that said, let's jump into the interview and hear firsthand what it was like to navigate that digital nomad visa at the very beginning. All right. Well, today's guests have an incredible story to tell. They are actually, Jenna is one of the first digital nomad visa recipients from San Francisco consulate. And her story is, interesting. I'm going to let her tell it, but she's here with her husband, Damien. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, Samantha. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to be on.
Nice to meet you too. Well, listen, I know that I have heard from, as I told you, Sophia, who works in our office, has heard your story. And she said, Samantha, you have got to hear this story. So I want to dive right in and maybe just start with the basics. Like what was, I know you're living here in Italy now, but what was the initial motivation for you and your family to move here?
The initial motivation was actually not to move here. The initial motivation was to move to Florida from California. And just a slight correction, it's the Los Angeles consulate, slight correction. But still California. So we intended to move to Florida. And so we took a scouting trip a couple summers ago, went there. And what I believe is God gave me this idea, like if you sell your house, you could go to Italy. You guys always wanted to go to Italy for a few months. And so we ended up selling our house and doing that. But before we went, actually, we're trying to make this very heavy life decision. We were at Disney World and met a woman in line, and she was asking us where we were from. She was from Austin, Texas. And we always would say, we came from Westlake Village, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. And lo and behold, she had moved from Westlake Village to Austin many years prior. And before she moved to Austin, her and her husband went to Italy for 4 months. So that was the same plan that we were having. So that was our confirmation to move forward with
She didn't know that that's what we were thinking.
Right.
And so when we met this stranger and she lived in the same town that we were from, which is a small town, and she's like, yeah, but we just went to Italy for 4 months in between. It was like we both had goosebumps. And we're like, okay, well, for sure, we're going to Italy. We don't know if we're living there, but we're going to go and check it. We've been there before, but we're going to have an experience.
Right. I think it's funny. I say your big life decision you make at Disney World, like all the places that you can make. Okay. So tell me about your family though. So it's you and Damien, and you have some kids.
Yes, we have 3 children. Our oldest son is 14, and then we have a daughter who is turning 11 this week, and our youngest son is 8. And we've been homeschooling the 3 of them this is our 5th year of homeschooling. And so we've always wanted to raise our kids with more of a worldview perspective. It's something that's been very important to Damien and I, and to be able to give them the opportunity to see different places, experience different cultures and people has been, one of our pillars.
So we came here last spring for a few months and learned about the Digital Nomad Visa and decided that really what we were meant to do is to not move to Florida, was to move to Italy. So then we moved forward with the process of the visa.
Of the digital. And now when did you say this was again? Last spring, right?
Yeah, we were here February 20th. Well, we went we did a couple other cities. We did London, Paris, Barcelona, and then we came into Italy for the last 2.5 months. So we were here end of February to end of May.
So when it was launched, the Digital Nomad was launched on April 4th. We were here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were really new with this too. So who was the digital nomad? Which one are you? Jenna, right?
And it's the digital nomad.
I'm the visa holder,
Yes.
You're
yes.
the visa holder. Okay. So you work, maybe just what do you do for people so they can understand and compare?
Sure. So Damien and I do work together, but it was easier for the visa to be only under one of
It
us.
was clear
Hmm.
at the consulate that they only wanted one of us to apply, not both.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we both have a doTERRA essential oil business. And so we educate people all over the world in many different countries how to use doTERRA essential oils and other products for natural health alternatives.
Okay. And so you do this work online, obviously. So would you say consulting online? Is that really what your role is and selling
Yes.
products? Yeah.
Yes.
Consulting, training through Zoom phone calls for, sales training of our teams, as well as
Okay.
education through webinars and social media online platforms.
Okay, perfect. So as we all know, the digital nomad visa has two ways, really. The first way is you're a remote worker, meaning you're employed by a company and they pay you a paycheck. And then there's you guys, which are truly digital nomads, right? Because you're not employed by anybody. You actually have your own business.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So this is and you have a degree, Jenna?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you're meeting all the qualifications of the initial digital nomad, and of course, it's changed just a little bit since you guys since April. But technically, it's all you have to be. I'm just reviewing this for people, so you have to be working in a remote capacity for at least 6 months, make a certain amount of money, also have a degree. Now, of course, you don't need a degree. They say you can have this experience, but it's a little bit risky that way. It's better to have the degree. So you know what? I know that you have a story, so I'm just going to let you go. Tell me about your process. Tell me what happened, and take me from the beginning.
Sure. So the first thing I would say, though, is from the Los Angeles consulate, they were quite clear there is no way you would get this visa without a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So, so LA was, you have to have a degree, you have to have it, you have to go through the process of getting it
Translated
tra-
and what's the terminology? Validated.
Apostille. Yeah,
Yep.
apostille.
well,
No,
apostille, but also just declared a value by the
yeah. Yes.
consulate.
Oh,
So,
through Chimia.
yes, you can go that way, but we went through the consulate itself.
Oh, they qualified your degree. That's interesting.
Yes, so you could
This
go
is
either
different.
pathway through
Mm.
Chimia or directly through the consulate. So,
Okay, in LA you could. So we'll just clarify that's not across the board. So we'll say in LA they let you do that. Okay, keep going.
so yes, we hired a lawyer from a recommendation from a friend of ours here in Italy.
Hmm.
And he, at the time that the digital nomad visa was launched, the Los Angeles consulate didn't have any information.
Hmm.
So there was nothing online. So there was nothing in California online and San Francisco either. So first we went off of the London qualifications.
Hmm.
And then once they were released in San Francisco, then went off those qualifications. We never actually received qualifications from the Los Angeles consulate until we arrived for our appointment, which they happened to be the same as San Francisco's. But it was after our appointment that they then put them online. So we were in, I think, the really early stages of the digital nomad visa. So it was a little bit like the blind leading the
Yeah.
blind. Um,
You could tell that they were not well versed in what the
Yeah,
qualifications were.
of
Yes.
course. Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure.
So our lawyer also did not have any experience. And so he was more of just a sounding board for us. We would gather all the documents, send them to him, and then he would give his recommendations on, if we needed a different document or more documentation. And so it was nice to have him, to ask questions of him, clarify the documentation, and just to kind of hold our hand through the
Hmm.
process.
Okay. Okay. So you go in for your appointment. And now I think the two of you were planning on applying independently, right? Each of you.
Yes. So we were planning on applying independently because that's what was recommended to us. And so the LA consulate finally responded back to our lawyer and said for us to both come along with our 3 children.
Mhm.
So we had a file box full of documents because, of course, you want to try to bring even the things that are not on the list.
Well, and then we had doubles, so we didn't know if they were going to, put us in one file or 2 files. So we had doubles of everything, double tax returns, things like that.
Right.
So it was a full file box. And then,
Okay.
so we arrived, and of course, everybody points out that we have this file box. But there was a younger woman who was going before us, and her experience was not good. And she ended up leaving in tears
Yeah.
because they were so,
Yeah.
I know, kind of a little
They're not
hostile.
kind, yes. And
Hmm.
so the 5 of us sitting there were not encouraged by watching her apply for the digital nomad before us. And so it was, in all honesty, it was a bit of a traumatic experience.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
we couldn't have electronics in there, so our kids sat. They didn't see us on time, of course, and the interview was quite lengthy. So 3 hours for the 3 kids of doing nothing but sitting. And
Wow.
it is definitely like an interrogation. And so I wasn't expecting it to be quite that.
S- Yeah, well, I hate to hear this kind of a story because um, I know how stressful it is because you're moving your whole family across the world, which on top of it is stressful, right? I mean, the whole idea and the decision making, and then to be faced with that kind of an experience when you're just asking for a visa to go and work somewhere else, it's upsetting for sure, and it's not. Not all consulates are the same way, and even on one day to another day and one applicant to another, it's a completely different experience. So, aside from, it's a process that I think at the beginning with the digital nomad visas, because we do a lot of these now, and the experience I think maybe is easier for some people. The interrogation, that whole sort of that attack of
Mhm.
almost a suspicious way of who are you and why do you want to move to Italy, and are
Yeah.
you telling us the truth, really? That seems to be going to the side a little bit. Not to say that there's not still some consulate clerks that are less than friendly, but it's too bad that you had that experience. And were you in interrogation for 3 hours, or was this just all your waiting period in between?
No, we waited for probably an hour to 90 minutes, and then we
Mm,
spoke with the consulate or the head of the consulate for
There was two
another.
gentlemen. One was I guess he is the consulate general of Los
mhm.
Angeles, and then another man who works for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the end, what happened at the end of this 3 hours? What was the outcome?
So at the end, we had another list of additional
Well,
documents.
just for what, so he smiled, said hello, and then that was the last of the last warm, feeling he gave us, right? And it was, yeah, this
Mhm.
interrogation. Then when and everything that we supplied was never good enough. So
Mhm.
we couldn't tell if it was, in hindsight, was this just part of the deal? Do you have the fortitude to keep going, or are you going to fold? That's how it felt.
Mhm.
So at
Mhm.
the
Right.
end, he looked at us, he gave us a list of things to do, and he said, "This is not a formal rejection," and printed a list of tasks
Mhm.
and documents
Yeah.
that he wanted and how he wanted them, and
Mhm.
sent us away. And then, like, said, we need to come back. I asked, "Oh, can we make an appointment here?" And that was clearly the wrong thing to say. He said, "You can go on the website."
So
Yeah.
we knew we needed from the West Coast that we needed to log on at 3 p.m. So we went straight home and sat in front of the computer for a half hour until it hit 3 o'clock, and then logged on right away and made 2 more appointments for 2 months later.
Okay. So in the interim, you had to do your homework, I guess. And was this homework completely feel like, did your lawyer, because it wasn't us that did it. So was your lawyer surprised at the documents that they were asking for?
He was a bit surprised that there were so many additional documents that were requested. We were surprised for things that are on the actual list, like bank statements. And when you go with bank statements, he said, no, I don't want your bank statements. I need signed letters from the bank of all of your accounts.
Mhm.
So it was a little bit frustrating when you come with the list that is on the website and then you're told, no, that's
Mhm.
not what we mean.
Yeah.
So we had to correct some things like that. And then, yes, we had to prove that we were experts in our field. And so we had multiple letters of recommendation from people that we had worked with. We had multiple letters from the company, doTERRA, that we're contracted with. We had a list of all trainings we have ever attended in the last 13
Mhm.
years. Like we just had to find any and all publications. We've been in books, like we
Right.
just everything we could think of
To
to
support.
to
Yeah.
support that particular needing to prove we were experts.
Well, here's something from my observation or listening to what you're saying. The reason I think that you probably were faced with that, first of all, do you remember I said those two pathways? One is you're an employee, the other one is you're self-employed. And in the past, before the Digital Nomad Visa came out, what you've described to me would technically go towards probably a self-employment visa here in Italy before the Digital Nomad Visa. And to get a self-employment visa for the occupation or the job or work that you're doing, as you've described, would be extremely difficult. So perhaps the test, if you come in now as an employee of a company, if anybody out there is listening and they're employees, this is not the same scrutinized documentations. They don't take a look at the documentations as strictly as they do if you are self-employed in like you guys are, like the capacity that you are. So although it sounds dreadful, to be honest, horrible, I kind of get it just based on what I know, especially LA, by the way, right now is our problem child, still is to this time, even though this was last year for you guys. But, I kind of see it a little bit. So you got all your homework, you went back in, and was there any issues with your kids? Did they even have any problems with having them included at all? Any problems at all?
No, well, because the first appointment they requested them to be there, then they said, no, you don't have
Mhm.
to bring them to the next appointment. So
Perfect. Yeah.
that was
Okay.
great.
All
Yes.
right. So
But
you
to
go in.
your point, like it did seem like one of the things that we had going for us, I think that was helpful was we are self-employed, but we're only contracted with one company. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
streamlined it for them a little bit.
For
But
sure. Yeah.
and you are correct. If someone it is they much easier route if you are employed and you're a remote,
Mm-hmm.
you're just a remote employee. That seemed like, yes, it would be so much simpler. That's what they wanted. It almost
Yeah.
felt like.
Yep.
Especially in the early days. Yeah. Especially in the early days of this visa, for sure. Because, imagine in the early days of this visa as well, people coming in, because in law, you don't need to have a degree. So imagine the people coming in the early days, self-employed with just experience.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's just a recipe for disaster. So let's say, okay, so now you go back, you give them your homework, and they tell you it's okay, and you're going to get the visa.
They, in not so many words. So at some point, we're giving them document after document, and then all of a sudden, the consulate general says, "Okay, we will accept your application," and then he walks away.
No, then he said he leans over to his partner, he says something, they both laugh, and then he walks away.
Oh no.
Partner is like, so when you get to Italy, but nobody ever said like, so he said, we'll accept your application. But obviously in my head was like, you can accept it and reject it. Like he
Yeah.
didn't say yes, but then his partner starts talking about, then he's smiling and he starts talking about, well, when you get to Italy, you got to go to the questura and you got to do your thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, you don't tell that to people you're going to say no to, but
Mm-hmm.
still the same kind of interrogation until it wasn't. So you're still a little shell shocked.
But it
Right.
did shift. It did shift from this interrogation to, then all of a sudden he said, okay, just give me the rest of the things on the list, instead of going one by one. And so then I was concerned, wait, what if I miss something? So I just kept, well, don't you need this? And he would say, oh, yes, I need that too. It was like, it was a bit bizarre, but clearly he was entering me into the computer. And then once he was finised, he looked at us and just said, have a nice trip.
And he looked at me and said, you have a nice wife.
So I turned around quickly because I just started crying because, that stress.
Just a relief.
Like, oh my gosh, that relief that it was over.
Yes.
Oh my, well, it's kind of over because you still had the next step, the next phase of the whole process, right? But the big part, you got the visa. And you know what, in those also a year ago, Damien, you and the kids can just come along and get your permesso di soggiorno when you're here. But now this has changed. I won't go into that too much detail.
What we did, though.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the process for us. Mm-hmm. We did it all when we got here.
Yeah, exactly. But nowadays it's not like that. It's changed. The spouse of a digital nomad visa needs to get a visa in advance now, a nulla osta in advance. But this is on another episode, so we'll talk about that later. But for you guys, you both arrived, all of you, the whole clan comes here, and you obviously had a place to live already.
Yes.
Okay. And then you start with the process here in Italy. So just, I know it's been a journey for you, but maybe can you tell me what your biggest surprise was when you actually got here?
I think the biggest surprise for me is we'd been here for a few months, like I said, in the spring, and I thought we would just plug right in, but it was still a readjusting period of, a different way of life as opposed to in California. So I think that took, and also it was mid-December, so it was Christmas time and New Year's and all that. So about 6 weeks in, I felt like, oh, okay, I got the groove of in Italy again.
But were there any setbacks when you came here as far as getting your permits and?
Zero. No.
Nothing.
Zero.
Good.
Nothing. I think that was probably the biggest surprise, is that since arriving, it has been quite easy. Mm-hmm. And so I feel very fortunate that we did hire a lawyer, because when we showed up at the questura, he was there. He got us in quickly. We didn't have to wait in any lines.
Mm-hmm.
Me and the Jenna, myself, and our oldest got fingerprinted that same day. It wasn't a separate appointment,
right?
So we got it all taken care of. Actually, and so I think the team that we have with our lawyer and actually our friend who's our landlord who we're renting this house from, he's got some connections here, so that's been helpful. Just to help us plug in and also to just make the process smoother.
Right. I think so. And I say this all the time, that in Italy, it really is who you know. This is a country built on relationships. So once you land here, and if you have the help of your friend who's your landlord, at the same time as you had hired somebody who knows what they're doing to help you get through the process, you can save yourself a whole lot of more pain. It sounds like you had enough pain at the beginning of the first part of the process. You don't need more when you get here.
No. Yeah.
How's your kids doing?
They're great. Yeah. Well, we homeschool, so their day-to-day life doesn't really change a whole lot. But they are making friends. We have a church. We're plugging in. We already had some friends here from when we were here in the spring. And the food, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to be here. So probably our middle daughter, she misses her friends the most at home. Yeah. But this was an experience that we all wanted to be on. And so I think because the way we handled it when we were thinking about moving was, we told our children that mom and dad will always make the final decision, but what is it that you think would be exciting? And so we got buy-in from them, when we were in Tuscany, we all fell in love. And my prayer was that we would all be aligned wherever it was that we were supposed to end up. And it was clear that it was specifically Tuscany of all the places in Italy. And so I think we all just feel that God's hand is in every single step for us. And so there's just peace everywhere. And so we just are enjoying the process, and we might be sad sometimes or miss people, but all in all,
Yeah.
everybody is very happy to be here.
Nice. Oh, it's such a good story. So one last question. If you were looking back, what advice would you give someone that's maybe applying for the digital nomad visa, maybe not that visa, or maybe just going through this process of applying for a visa together and coming to Italy with their family? What advice would you give someone?
I think I would say hire a lawyer. I think it is worth the money. Find the right one. We interviewed a few. And I think just having that other person who knows the ropes, you can obviously do it on your own, but if you can afford to have a lawyer, I think that that has been really helpful for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That's one
I would
thing.
agree. And I would say it was it's an emotional process because you don't know if it's going to happen, right? You're either going to move to another country and it's going to be totally different, or you're not.
Yeah, and you're so invested.
And you're invested. So this isn't like if you're on the fence, this isn't. Don't do it. Like you're going to do it. You need to and you are risking a lot, but you need to be certain that this is the path that you want to take. There's no halfway with this process.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
be resilient, have some fortitude, some grit. Things are
Yeah.
going to go wrong and be bumpy, and it doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. There were many times where I felt like, I think this is the end. And we would just keep saying, nope, we just keep going. We keep walking forward until all doors have been slammed shut.
Right.
And so I think just having that fortitude of, it doesn't matter how many documents they ask me for. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to keep trying because it might take that, and it might not, and it might be simple and, fantastic. But just because things are hard doesn't mean that they're not possible.
And you can't think about the rejection or the possibility of it. You just have to, well, this is what they asked for.
Yeah.
I meet all the requirements and I'm moving forward, and not think about all the what ifs that could happen. You just do your thing.
Just go all in.
Yes.
And just try. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. What a great story. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me. I love hearing the stories of people who have, different experiences, their own experience. Everybody's experience is different because Italy is so bizarrely discretionary. You know what I mean? There's never one exact pathway, but I think it's what makes it worthwhile. And I guess, like you say, anything worthwhile sometimes is a bit of a challenge. But I'm so happy to have met you guys, and congratulations on your move here. And I hope your kids are loving it, and that you continue to love your new life here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure. And thank you. We're happy to be here. And good luck to everybody else who's making their way here too.
Well, that was a very interesting story and conversation. And of course, it has a happy ending at the end, which is always a good thing. But it reminds me that I want to repeat again that the Digital Nomad Visa in particular is a fairly new visa. It's only been out for a year. So what they experienced at the beginning sounded, of course, very traumatic and very scary. And it probably was because, again, normally people don't really talk to each other in consulates and here in Italy. But when it was something was so new, and the particular situation or the particular case of Jenna, it's understandable that the consulate was a little resistant at the beginning. And I can tell you that the digital nomad visas that we are doing now do not have the same kind of resistance that perhaps they experienced at the beginning. Now, it's not to say that one consulate won't be different from another. And Los Angeles, unfortunately, is still a bit of a problem child. It's still certainly one of the more challenging consulates to work at. But if you do everything the right way, if you collect all of your documents that you need, and of course the directives are much clearer now than they were last year, and you go in there with just the confidence like Damien and Jenna said, just be, positive and keep moving forward and do what you have to do. If you qualify, you will get the visa. So you just have to get yourself in that frame of mind and move through it, and try not to let one person's scary story scare you away, because the benefits of moving to Italy on this visa in particular really are very big. So finally, what can you take away from this episode? So let me break down my top 3 tips. Number 1, do your homework, but be ready to adapt, because it's important to research the visa process thoroughly. But just know that no matter how much you prepare, things can change, and that's okay. Your situation, your job, your role, your remote work, where you're applying, where you're moving, it's all unique to you. So your story will be different from this story and different from someone else's. And second, get professional help. Now, I say this all the time, and of course, we offer this help, but it's not about that. It's not about coming to Smart Move Italy. It's about recognizing the fact that there are some things that you shouldn't, or if you don't have to, you shouldn't do by yourself. And getting a visa for Italy and arriving in Italy and going through the process, unless you are very familiar with the process, speak the language, and are super confident and easygoing, it is not something really that you should be doing by yourself without some help. Even if you can't afford a professional to help you, even if you have a friend or somebody who's has the knowledge and the languages to help you through the process, the support will really go a long way. So you really should get some help. Of course, professional help is always better, but if you can't afford that, get somebody to support you and help guide you through the way. And number 3, stay super flexible and patient. Like I said, being able to pivot is one of the best skills that you'll have when you move to Italy, not just at the visa process, but even much later on. So make sure that you embrace that. Change is good. You're running to change. You're coming to Italy. It's a totally different place to live. So the process, try to embrace the process at the same time. And remember that every challenge is an opportunity to learn and to grow and ultimately get closer to your Italian dream. It's time for listener questions. Just like the old radio call-in shows, my team has picked 3 listener questions, all left on our voicemail. I have no idea what these questions are, but I haven't been stumped yet. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, question number 1. Can my spouse and children automatically come with me to Italy, move to Italy on my visa? Okay, so in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. And it depends where you're coming from. I'm going to assume that this question came from somebody in North America that can travel to Italy visa-free for 90 days out of a time. Now, in the past, some visas, you were able to come with your spouse, like we heard in this episode today, where Damien came with Jenna and they applied for their permesso di soggiorno when they were already in Italy. He arrived as a tourist. But rules are changing, and they have just recently changed insofar as the Digital Nomad Visa, the student visa, and even the investor visa that allows one visa holder to bring their family with them to Italy. Now you need to go through a different process of family reunification. And I'm going to put a link in this episode to a blog post I just wrote about ways to fast track this family reunification. But basically what you have to do is the spouse of the visa holder now has to get a nulla osta. And a nulla osta is a clearance, and then apply for their own visa in order to join the visa holder here in Italy. It's a little complicated, surprise, surprise, but you can actually read more on the link to my blog post. Okay, question number 2. What financial requirements do I need to meet if I'm moving to Italy with my family? All right, so this is kind of an open-ended question. So it really depends on how you're moving here. If you are an Italian with non-Italian spouse, then the financial requirements is really very low. You just have to show that you make the minimum or have the minimum amount of money in your bank account, because of course you can move to Italy and work and earn money. Same thing goes if you're European. You only have to show, it's about 8,000 euros in your bank account, something around that amount. And in fact, in some comune, you only have to sign a declaration that says you have this amount. Now, of course, if you're coming on an elective residency visa, there are minimum income requirements, as well as digital nomad visa, and student visa has just a way that you have to prove that you can pay for yourself when you're here. So every visa is just a tiny bit different. Now, if you're bringing your family, of course, not only do you have to prove that you can, pay for yourself, but you have to add money to that amount so that it supports your family as well. And unfortunately, there's not a line in the sand of exactly how much that is depending on the visa. But it will definitely be more because, obviously you have to support your family when they're here as well. So the best thing to do is to pick what visa it is or which way that you're applying at, and then look specifically at that and make sure that you have either access to the money, it's in a bank account with your name, or that you actually meet the requirements. Like I say, every single visa is a little bit different. And question number 3, can I bring my kids with me, my minor children with me, on my Digital Nomad Visa? Yes, actually, of course, you can bring your children. Italy doesn't separate families. So you can absolutely bring your minor children. The visa holder can bring their minor children. But with this new rule, what's kind of funny, I mean, it flies in the face of the purpose of the Digital Nomad Visa to, attract highly skilled people to Italy. So they put this new family reunification visa in place, which means that the children can go with a visa holder, but the spouse can't. So without another visa. So if, let's say it's the husband is the visa holder, he can come with the kids, but mom's got to stay at home until she gets a visa. So there's still some clarifications that need to be sort of ironed out with this new family reunification. But generally speaking, of course, you can bring your children to Italy on your visa. Even if you're here as an elective residency visa and you have minor children, they can come with you as dependents, as your own dependents, and you have to, of course, show that you have more money to support them. Sometimes a lot more if you have a lot of children. But they can come with you. But often for the elective residency visa, even though there's a section where you can say the dependent on your application, often the children themselves also need to apply for the elective residency visa in tandem with you, of course. But certainly you can bring your children with you. Well, that's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about visas, citizenship, property, and really anything about moving to Italy that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode, please feel free to send us a voicemail at our website at smartmoveitaly.com/podcast, or just click on the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, you can find all of the resources and the links to the people and the places that I mentioned in this episode inside the show notes. Ciao for now. A New Life in Italy podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created and hosted by me, Samantha Wilson. Production by London Nero, and with special thanks to Ali Frothingham, Sofia Pisana, and the entire team at Sentire. Follow A New Life in Italy wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you're thinking of moving to Italy, whether full-time, part-time, or for a lifetime, come and see me over at smartmoveitaly.com and we'll help you get here and start living your best life. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate and leave a review. It's much appreciated. I can't wait to meet up with you again next week, same time, same place. Ciao for now.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.